Hello, everyone. Long time no see. It's been a while since I made a cracked pot video, hasn't it? For those of you who follow this channel, the last one I made was in July of 2024. And there's a really good reason for this. And that's what this video is all about. It's about telling you what happened and also what's next, where we're going. So I was actually getting ready to release the next video. I wasn't quite done with it for in August of that year, and my dad collapsed in the local Costco food court on August 5th of 2024. He was rushed to the hospital, and what was originally thought just to be senior dehydration on a really hot day wound up being something much more serious. Yes, it was stage 4 cancer. And so it just taken me this long to really talk about it or even, want to make a video about what happened. And that is what this video is all about. So Dad opted for no treatment because he just hated the idea of chemo and radiation. He was in his late 80s, but I think even if this would have happened sooner, he still wouldn't have gotten chemo and radiation because he was very opposed to it and said, the treatment's worse than the disease. I want to have a good quality of life. So he wanted to die at home. So he came home, and I had been living with him for several years, and I became his full-time caregiver. And I'm going to share some things that happened with that. It was very challenging, but it was a blessing. It was really good. So my father fell on August 5th, and he was gone by September 28th of that same year. So yes, it was so fast. It was like a swan dive. Yeah. It was hard, but God gave me a lot of grace. And I want to talk about some of those really awesome things that God did for my father and for myself during this time, which was really difficult. First of all, before any of this happened on August 5th, God gave me 3 dreams in one night. And this happened, I don't know if it was the last week of June, which is actually my father's birthday, was in the last week of June, or it was the first week of July. I didn't write it down, as I often think, oh, I'll remember that, and then I don't. So, my bad. But these 3 dreams in one night showed me that my dad was going to be leaving me soon to go home. And that's how I interpreted it. And I knew that I had a 3-month window. But what I didn't know was when that exit time, in other words, when was going to be those last 3 months. I just didn't know. And so when Dad fell, I didn't know, okay, is it going to be from the time that I had my dream, or is it going to be from the time he fell? And it wound up being from the time of my dream. So Dad fell on August 5th, and he was gone by September 28th. Yeah, it was so fast. Yep. So when I had the dream, I knew, okay, Dad is getting ready to leave. I better start praying. So I was so grateful to God for giving me that advanced warning so that I could prepare and begin to pray for supernatural strength and grace, and that I would be able to endure what was next, because I was really close to my dad. I love my dad so much, and we've been living together for many years, he and I just enjoyed his company, and he was like my best friend. So I was like, by the way, I've got a lot of dogs, so if you hear barking, snoring, growling, dogs eating on puppy kibble, that's what that noise is. And just to let you know how many, I have way too many. You'd have to use more than one hand to count all of them. It's kind of ridiculous, but I really am a dog person. I am an animal person, but I don't think cats would do too well in this environment, especially with some of the dogs. So that's just a little disclaimer there for the extra noise. All right, getting back on track. So, yeah, I didn't know. I knew it was going to be soon. I knew I had 3 months. He falls. I'm like, okay, is it 3 months from now? So I'm thinking I have all of August, all of September, and all of October. But it wound up being 3 months from the time I had my dream. So it was really, really fast. It was hard. And it's hard talking about this, but I want you to see how good God is. And even though it's just really hard to lose somebody that you love, so no matter if you are expecting your loved one to go, let's say from a terminal illness like my dad, or if it's a total shock, like it's a car accident or some other horrible event that happens and it takes away your loved one, either way, it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks. We tell ourselves when our special someone, when we know they're going to go, it'll be easier. Yeah, we say, okay, I know it's coming, so it'll be easier somehow. And it just isn't. It just isn't. I lost my best friend of 30 plus years to an illness, a terminal illness. And it was just devastating. And I was shocked. It's like, why is this so hard? And with my dad, it was also hard. And it's just because we're not created for death. We are created for life. Death does not resonate with us. So it hits hard. It's going to hurt. And it's just something that is part of life. For those of us who believe, we can cling on to the hope, like the Bible talks about. We're going to see our loved one again. We're going to spend time in eternity again. They're with God the Father, the Son, the Spirit. Yeah, it's awesome. They're in heaven. It's all good. But we're left behind. And the emptiness that you feel when your loved one is gone is really tough. And only God can help you through that. Because his word says he's close to the brokenhearted and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. So I often hear verses in my head, but I don't have like what book, chapter, and verse. I have to go find out where it is, but I will hear verses in my head. And that's in the Bible somewhere. All right. So some great things that God did for Dad and me. I want to share those things because they were amazing. And that was all part of this journey with him and I, and me trying to take care of him, and some of the cool things that happened that I want to share those too. Taking care of my dad was a huge blessing. It was also a bit of a challenge, and it's challenging for anyone that becomes a full-time caregiver. It's just a hard thing to do. But for me, it was especially difficult because of my disabilities. So in my very first Cracked Pot intro video, I explain that I'm actually a blind and deaf person. I have a genetic disease called Usher syndrome. It's a combination of retinitis pigmentosa and hearing loss. And I am actually deaf without my hearing aids. And I am so blind at this point that I cannot see my face in the mirror. So when Dad lost his ability to feed himself, it was a little bit challenging getting the food into his mouth. Since I can't see my face, I couldn't see his face either. So it became, we just laughed hysterically about it. Instead of him being sad about his state, here he is dying from cancer and he can no longer feed himself. And here I am, blind as a bat, trying to feed him and missing and getting food on his cheek, his nose, a few times his eyebrow. I I always had a wet washcloth to just wipe his face down and try again. I did get better at it, much better, but it was a challenge, and it also was an incredible bonding time for us. And we chose to have humor about it instead of each of us being depressed about our own condition. So Dad had lost some weight prior to his diagnosis, but by the time he passed on, he was his normal weight and looked very, very good, very healthy. A blessing from God was that my father had absolutely no pain whatsoever with his cancer. None whatsoever. There was only like the last 2 days of his life where he did have some pain, and I kept him comfortable with morphine. But throughout the whole journey of it, there was just no pain. In fact, right before, I want to say a few days before he passed, a hospice worker came over, and Dad was unresponsive at this point. And the hospice worker was not my normal hospice worker that I've been working with. He was taking his coworker's spot because there was another conflict with her coming over. Anyway, he walked through the door and he looked at my dad and his mouth fell open. And he's just standing there, and I'm looking at him, and he just looks like he's in shock. And I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And he's like, I am just so surprised. It goes, I'm in shock. And I'm like, why? And he said, because he said, if I did not know that your father was dying of cancer, I would just think he was a senior citizen having a nice little nap, was just some snoring. He said he looks really healthy. And so he checked my dad's vitals, which were all perfect blood pressure, perfect oxygen, no temperature. I mean, everything was great. And he just kept shaking his head. He's like, he looks so healthy and so peaceful. I am just stunned that this man is actually dying from cancer. He goes, and he just kept shaking his head and repeating over and over how surprised he was. So, yeah, Dad looked great. He really did. And a few other amazing things that happened with his journey into the next life was at one point when he was getting close to losing his ability to speak, he was sitting in the recliner and all of a sudden his eyes just get big and he goes, wow. And I was just kind of like standing there watching him. And, I could tell he was getting really emotional and he was seeing something. So I just waited until he looked at me, which was a few minutes later, and he goes, wow. And I said, what's going on, Dad? And he said, I think I just saw a glimpse of what heaven looks like. And his voice was all quivery and he was very emotional and even like cried a little bit, wiped his face. And he said, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I tried to get him to describe it to me, but he's like, there are no words. And he goes, I can hardly wait to go there. Now, prior to this, he wasn't real anxious to leave. He wasn't scared to die, but he didn't want to leave his pets, his home. He didn't want to leave me. He just liked his life here. He was trying to fight the cancer in his mind and through prayer. But when he saw that, he was like, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready. Another great thing that happened was at this point, he had lost the ability to speak and feed himself. But I watched him sit up in his bed and like his eyes got really big and he got a huge smile. He was looking at something at the end of his bed. And I just sensed that there was another presence there. My eyes were not spiritually open, so I could not see who it was. Whether it was angelic or someone visiting from the other side, I do not know. But he was like nodding his head and smiling like he was having a mind-to-mind conversation. He was waving at them and at one point even lifted up his arms like, okay, take me, I'm ready to go. But it wasn't his time yet. He would pass on, I want to say about 5 days later. Anyway, it was so great that he didn't experience pain, that he was healthy, as healthy as you could be having cancer, great appetite, just enjoyed food. Like he wanted breakfast, he wanted lunch, he wanted dinner, and he was just eating, watching his different Christian channels that he loved to watch on the TV, was in good spirits and joyful and happy. And so I could not have asked for a better way for my father to go. He could not have asked for a better way. So he died in my arms on September 28th. And that's when my world kind of imploded, because even though I knew where he was going and he was going to be not wanting to come back to his old, 88-year-old body, he was such a big part of my life, and for him to leave it was very, very difficult for me. So that is what happened. I needed to take some time to grieve and deal with that loss and just, to heal from that. It was hard. I even had like what is referred to as like an afterlife grieving vision where I did see Dad in heaven. I saw him. I almost didn't really recognize him at first because he looked so young and because of his head of hair. He always kind of had thin, wispy hair and lost his hair fairly early. And when I saw him, he had this full, amazing head of hair. Um, I was just so surprised. Anyway, yeah, he's not wanting to come back here. And I don't want him to either. It's just like I mentioned earlier, it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, no matter if you think you're prepared for it or not. It just is. And I know somebody out there needs to hear that. And it's totally okay. It's okay to feel sad, even if you know your loved one is in heaven and they're out of pain or whatever the situation might be. It's okay to be sad about that. And so, moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening now, what I've been going through recently, and where Cracked Pots, this channel, what I hope to do next. As there always is with any loss of a loved one, there's that period of time where you're grieving them and you're trying to adjust to them no longer being in your life. And that's challenging. It's hard for everyone. I had an additional challenge because there was immediate family discord. I have a sibling who's very unhappy with my father's will and is contesting it. This person is trying to say that my dad was mentally incompetent and also wants me disinherited. So the beef is mainly over the family home, even though the sibling has their own home and makes a total of, I want to say, close to $300,000 a year. And I'm on Social Security disability. It doesn't matter. And so it's been very hurtful, upsetting, wounding, all of the negative adjectives. I've had to really pray to keep my heart in a good spot, the way God would have it to be, and not become bitter, hateful, and unforgiving. It's dragged out for a couple of years. I have a probate court coming up where all of this is going to get resolved at the end of this year's September, unless it gets rescheduled again. I don't think it will. So I'd appreciate any prayers for God's justice in this situation, because it's pretty bad. Anywho, I have been in counseling and emotionally in a pretty good space right now. So that is why, excuse me, my throat's a little creaky. That is why I really feel led to start making videos again and making content for crackpots. And I was really shocked when I came back and opened all my apps that I haven't used in 2024 and realized how much more vision I have lost. So stress and inflammation really does speed up retinitis pigmentosa. And initially I thought, I can't even make videos anymore. I can't do it. But God is gracious and is helping me, even though I can't see very well at all. And I don't have any help. I don't have like an editor or a team or anything. I'm making my own graphics. And so the plan is to continue to the best of my ability and gradually phase into podcast. After all, you are looking at my pot, right? It's kind of like a podcast anyway. And it's because I can't use a selfie stick and I don't have a laptop. And I just can't tell if I'm even on camera or if I'm filming the inside of my nose. So it's just better to do it this way, don't you think? Anywho, I'm also planning to include links for donations. In the future, they will be like on the video descriptions or the main description for the channel in case anyone wants to support me and support this ministry. So that will be a new thing to look for. And I will keep you guys updated on when I am moving to podcast, or I'll just gradually implement it and put it on this channel and on the other channel. I don't know which podcast I'm going to go with, most likely Apple and maybe even Spotify as well. So I have to learn to do that. And God taught me how to make videos and edit and do graphics. And I'm sure that if he wants me to do podcasts, he will help me learn how to do it. And so that's the scoop, Betty Boop. So I want to thank all of you for watching to this point in this video of my update of what happened to me and why I disappeared, and what happened with Dad, which, as I said before, it was really a blessing to be able to take care of him and to be with him to the end, but it was also a heartbreaking thing for me. But I am doing very well. God is with me. And I do have a testimony that God can help you get through just about anything. Disabilities and people moving out of your life through death or other things. And all I can say is that God is good. And if you put your hope in Him and your trust in Him and be obedient to Him, He will get you through all those hard spots. Because life is just not easy, which is why we all look forward to spending eternity with the one who created us and the one who loves us. So with that said, may Abba Shamayim, our Heavenly Father, bless you, and I will see you in the next video.